My name is Avery Sloan. I am 31 years old, and on Christmas morning, my father handed out gifts to everyone in the room except me. He stood in front of the tree like some cheerful king doing favors for people he thought mattered. My mother got a gold bracelet. My sister got a Cartier box and laughed before she even opened it because she already knew it would be expensive. Even my sister's fiancé got a leather watch case with his initials stamped into it. I sat there with my coffee going cold in my hand, waiting for my name. It never came. I thought maybe my father had forgotten one bag in the hall. Maybe there was one small box behind the tree. There wasn't. When I finally asked if there had been a mix-up, my mother looked at me the way people look at a stain on a white rug. She said, "Why waste money on you?" Then she smiled without warmth and added, "We only keep you around out of habit." My sister tilted her head, looked me up and down and said, "You are not on our level." My father did not correct either of them. He just adjusted the cuff of his sweater and told everyone to open their gifts before breakfast got cold. I smiled because sometimes smiling is the only dignified thing left to do when people are trying to erase you in your own family. Then I stood up and walked out. 8 days later, on January 2nd at 8:30 in the morning, a package was left at the front door of their showroom. My sister opened it and screamed. My mother started shaking. My father grabbed his phone, tried calling me 3 times, then 6, then 12. By 9:05, he said the words I had been waiting years to hear. "Oh no, I cannot reach her anymore." Before I tell you what he said and what happened after I walked out, tell me what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I am curious to see how far this story will travel. The reason Christmas hit as hard as it did was not because I cared about presents. It was because that moment finally stripped away the last polite lie I had been telling myself about my family. They had not forgotten me. They had staged me. There is a difference. My father, Richard Sloan, ran a luxury home furnishing showroom in Savannah called Sloan House Interiors. He liked to tell people it was a family legacy business, the kind built on taste, discipline, and old-school standards. My mother, Dana, floated through charity luncheons and gallery nights, telling everyone she had raised a family of refined people. My younger sister, Chloe, was the face of the brand online. She posted silk sofas, imported lighting, and carefully curated tablescapes with captions about timeless elegance. From the outside, they looked polished, successful, untouchable. Inside the family, I was the one they treated like the embarrassing extra. I had not gone into the showroom. I had not married well. I had not built a social media persona around my cheekbones and neutral cashmere. I worked in commercial acquisitions and asset restructuring. In other words, I understood contracts, distressed properties, debt exposure, and the difference between looking rich and actually being solvent. My family called it my little paperwork career for years, the same way people dismiss oxygen until they are underwater. 6 years earlier, when my father's business nearly collapsed after a brutal financing crunch and a landlord dispute he had badly mismanaged, I stepped in quietly. Not because they deserved it, because I still believed, back then, that if I saved them once, maybe they would finally see me as one of them. I used the payout from a deal I had closed in Charlotte, bought the building their flagship showroom operated in through a holding company, cleared the arrears, negotiated their vendor exposure down, and personally guaranteed the seasonal inventory line that kept them alive. My father told people he had pulled off a miracle turnaround. My mother called it a blessing. Chloe called it proof that the family always lands on its feet. None of them ever bothered to understand what I had actually done. They thought I was helping with paperwork. They never grasped that the building was mine, the rescue was mine, and the reason their candles stayed lit every December was me. For 6 years, they paid almost nothing, ignored every hint that I wanted proper structure, and treated me like an awkward cousin who just kept showing up. Every holiday, I was seated late, cropped out of photos, spoken over, corrected, laughed at. Christmas was not an isolated cruelty. It was only the first time they stopped pretending it was accidental. And maybe the most offensive part was not what my mother said. It was that my father heard it, saw me sitting there empty-handed while everyone else laughed and unwrapped things, and decided that silence was his most honest answer. Have you ever noticed how people who depend on you will sometimes disrespect you the hardest, just to protect themselves from admitting how much power you really have? That was my family. They could only feel superior if they kept me small. The problem for them was that I had stopped needing their version of me a long time ago. They just did not know it yet. I did not cry when I left on Christmas. I did something my family had never once expected from me. I got quiet. The dangerous kind of quiet. I drove back to my condo, took off my coat, made tea, sat at my kitchen counter, and wrote down everything I had covered for them in the previous 6 years. Property taxes on the building, insurance, emergency roof work, 2 vendor settlements, the line of credit renewal I had signed when my father's bank was ready to cut him loose, a below-market occupancy agreement I had foolishly allowed to drift year after year because family was supposed to mean something. I printed the current deed. I printed the loan documents. I printed the trademark registration for Sloan House Interiors, which my grandmother had assigned to me in a private transfer during the business crisis because she did not trust my father not to sink the name entirely. Then I called my attorney. Not the family attorney, mine. By Monday morning, she had done what good lawyers do when emotion is finally ready to become paperwork. She made it clean. Effective immediately, my personal guarantee on the January inventory line was withdrawn. Effective immediately, the month-to-month preferential occupancy of the flagship premises would terminate in 30 days. Effective immediately, any use of the Sloan House mark without my written authorization would expose them to injunctive action. Effective immediately, all communication was to go through counsel. I asked her to put the documents in a white gift box inside the courier package. She laughed once when I said it, then realized I was serious. I was. If they wanted symbolism, I could do symbolism. On January 2nd at 8:30 in the morning, the package landed at the showroom door just before they opened. Later, I learned Chloe brought it inside because she assumed it was a late holiday gift from a client. She peeled back the paper, opened the white box, saw the documents clipped beneath the brass key tag for the showroom master lock, and screamed for our mother. Dana read the first page and sat down hard on an ottoman, like her knees had vanished. Richard came out of his office still talking to someone about a New Year design consultation, took one look at the letterhead, and went pale. Chloe called me first. I let it ring. Then my mother called. Then my father. Then all 3 again. By 9:05, my attorney emailed to confirm receipt had been signed for, and my father was apparently in full panic, demanding to know what right I thought I had. What right? That was the funny part. People are always offended by your boundaries when they built their comfort out of your silence. He left me a voicemail on the 3rd attempt. Avery, pick up. There has to be some misunderstanding. Another voicemail 3 minutes later. This is outrageous. Call me now. Then one from my mother, cold and shaking. You are not doing this over Christmas. Then one from Chloe that was almost funny in how quickly her voice changed from smug to desperate. Avery, if this is some weird stunt, it is not cute. We have clients today. Grant is here. Dad is freaking out. Call me back. I did not. I listened to every voicemail once, saved them, and forwarded them to my attorney. At noon, my father sent a text saying the building could not possibly be mine because he had built the business. That was exactly the point. He thought business and ownership were the same thing because for 6 years nobody had forced him to read a line of what he signed. I answered with 5 words. Read the attachments more carefully. Then I blocked the number. Within an hour, Chloe had posted a quote about betrayal on her Instagram story. My mother started calling extended family. By evening, I had heard from 2 aunts, 1 cousin, and a family friend from church who wanted to know if I had really decided to destroy my father's livelihood over hurt feelings. Hurt feelings. I remember staring at that phrase and thinking how convenient it must be to call 6 years of exploitation a mood. What do you call it when people accept your money, your protection, your legal risk, your silence, your labor, and still make a point of showing you that you are beneath them? Whatever word you choose, hurt feelings is not strong enough. The next day, they came to see me in person, which was predictable because my family had always believed rules were for other people. I opened my condo door and found all four of them there. My father in an overcoat he had not buttoned properly because he had clearly dressed in a hurry. My mother with that rigid social smile she wore when she planned to say something vicious in a soft voice. Chloe in cream boots and fury. Grant standing half a step behind them, looking like a man who had just discovered his future in-laws were not who he thought they were. My father started talking before I invited anyone in. He said there had been enough theatrics and that we needed to resolve this like adults. I asked which adults he meant, because the last time I saw him, he handed luxury gifts to everyone in the room except one daughter and called that normal. My mother cut in and said I was making a family misunderstanding into a business attack. I asked what exactly had been misunderstood when she said they only kept me around out of habit. Chloe rolled her eyes and said, "Here we go." She claimed they had all been joking, that Christmas had gotten tense, that I was always so literal, so sensitive, so dramatic. That word again. Sensitive. Families like mine love that word because it lets cruel people pretend the real problem is your nervous system. I told them the documents were valid, the deadlines were real, and if they wanted to discuss a commercial transition, they could do it through counsel. My father's face changed then. The polished public one cracked, and I saw the man underneath. The one who had spent years needing me to be beneath him. He said I would never have that building without him. I said maybe not. But he also would not still be inside it without me. Grant looked at Chloe. Chloe looked away. My mother tried a different route and started crying, saying I was humiliating the family, that people were already talking, that clients would ask questions, that my grandmother would be ashamed. I asked her if my grandmother would have been proud of Christmas morning. She said that was not fair. I said fair had not been part of this family in years. Then Chloe finally said the one thing that made the whole situation click for Grant. She snapped that I was jealous because I had never been the face of anything. Not the business, not the family, not the room. There it was. Not money, not gifts. Status. They had reduced everything to social position so completely that they could not imagine any other measure of value. I asked Chloe if she knew whose guarantee kept the business line open this quarter. She said, "Dad handles the finances." I looked at my father and asked him whether he had told her the bank had already been notified. His expression answered before his words did. Chloe turned white. Grant said, "Wait, what bank?" Nobody answered him. My father stepped forward and lowered his voice as if intimacy could replace honesty. He said the line of credit issue was temporary and that if I stopped acting irrational, he was sure we could fix this privately. I asked him a very simple question. If I was so irrational, so unimportant, so beneath all of you, why had every one of you come running the second I stopped protecting you? He had no answer. None of them did. My mother switched again, blaming my job, my independence, the city I lived in, the way success had made me hard. Chloe said I was using money as a weapon. I laughed because there is no accusation more revealing than that one coming from people who only notice money when it is no longer flowing toward them. My father warned me I was making a mistake I could never undo. I told him he was right about one thing. There are some things you cannot undo. A sentence like "why waste money on you" is one of them. Habit is another. By the time they left, my mother was furious. My father was trying to look dignified through panic. Chloe was whisper fighting with Grant in the hallway, and I felt something I had not felt around my family since I was a teenager. Calm. Not because it did not hurt, because it finally made sense. The same people who said I was not on their level were now begging the floor beneath their feet not to move. And that floor had my name on it. The ugliness started after they realized guilt was not going to work. First came the social version of the fight. My mother called relatives and framed me as unstable. My father told vendors I was having some kind of breakdown and trying to extort him. Chloe posted quotes about narcissists, ungrateful daughters, and women who confuse bitterness with power. A week later, one of their bigger vendors called my attorney, asking whether the business was about to lose the premises. because rumor had spread that a family dispute was threatening operations. That was when my father made his real move. He had a lawyer send over a packet claiming the building had always been intended as a family asset, that my company merely held title for tax convenience, and that Sloan House Interiors had acquired equitable rights through years of occupancy and business investment. It was an aggressive argument, which I might almost have respected if it had not been stitched together with fiction. Attached to the packet were supposed board minutes from a meeting that never happened, an internal memo I had never seen, and a scanned signature that looked enough like mine to make an uninformed person hesitate. My attorney did not hesitate. She called me and said exactly 2 words that made my whole body go cold. They forged. For 1 long minute, I did not speak. Then I sat down at my desk and pulled every archive I had. Metadata, email chains, version histories, bank wires, insurance writers, the original grandmother transfer. I do not know if my father thought I would fold because I was emotional, or because I was his daughter, or because people like him assume confidence is the same thing as competence. What he forgot was that my whole profession exists because other people lie on paper and then act offended when someone notices. We responded hard. My attorney sent a demand to preserve all records, accused their counsel of relying on facially defective documents, and filed for declaratory relief confirming title, control, and trademark rights. The bank, once shown the dispute and the withdrawn guarantee, froze any discretionary expansion on their account. 2 large January inventory shipments were paused. A local design blog picked up whispers that Sloan House Interiors was facing operational instability. That was when the family began to fracture in ways gossip could not soften. Grant called me privately one evening. He said he did not want details, but he needed to know whether Chloe had lied to him about the business being hers someday. I told him the honest version. Chloe had been promised a throne inside a kingdom she did not own. He was silent for several seconds and then thanked me in a voice that sounded much older than when I had met him. 2 days later, their engagement photos disappeared from her page. Meanwhile, my father tried one final family intervention at the showroom itself. He invited me under the pretense of discussing a structured exit. When I walked in, my mother, Chloe, the family attorney, and 2 senior staff members were waiting as if they could pressure me by turning it into a ceremony. My father began with a speech about legacy, about blood, about the humiliation of being challenged by his own daughter. He said I had always wanted to prove something. I said I had. That I existed, for starters. My mother said this was all because no one made enough fuss over me at Christmas. I looked at both staff members and asked if they knew the family had told me they only kept me around out of habit. The room went silent. My father snapped that private words were private. I asked why cruelty becomes private only after witnesses appear. Then the attorney for the family slid a proposed settlement across the table. They wanted 18 months to remain in the building at the same minimal occupancy rate, full permission to keep using the brand, and a mutual non-disparagement clause that would have gagged me while protecting them. In exchange, my father was prepared to acknowledge my contribution in a private letter. A private letter. After years of public disrespect, forged paperwork, and a Christmas performance designed to remind me I did not count, he was offering to maybe write down that I had been useful. I pushed the settlement back across the table and said no. One of the staff members looked like she wanted to disappear. The other looked like she had just figured out who had really been keeping the lights on. My father called me vindictive. My mother called me cold. Chloe said I was trying to ruin her life. I asked her a question I had been holding for years. At what exact point did you all decide I was only family when I was paying for things? No one answered. The attorney ended the meeting 10 minutes later because he could see what they could not. The facts were not on their side. The performance was. And performances have a short shelf life once the documents start talking. The hearing that followed was not dramatic in the way movies like to imagine courtrooms are. It was not thunder and shouting and surprise witnesses bursting through doors. It was something much more satisfying. It was slow humiliation under fluorescent lights. My father came in wearing one of his expensive gray suits, as if fabric could lend credibility to forged board minutes. My mother sat beside him rigid and offended. Chloe looked furious and exhausted. Their attorney looked less confident than he had at the showroom meeting, which told me he had finally done the reading his clients should have done years earlier. My side was simple: title history, transfer records, financial rescue documents, guarantee withdrawal, trademark chain, email evidence. Metadata showing the board minutes they submitted had been created 3 days after Christmas on Chloe's laptop and altered twice before production. That part made even the judge pause. Their attorney tried to say it was a draft accidentally mislabeled. My attorney asked why a draft had my simulated signature embedded into it. There are moments when a lie dies in public, and you can almost hear the air leave it. That was one of them. My father was asked directly whether he had ever paid commercial rent consistent with ownership claims. He started with a speech about family arrangements and informal understandings. The judge cut him off and asked for numbers. Actual numbers. Specific months. Specific accounts. He had none. Chloe was asked whether she had represented the business publicly as family-owned without clarifying the structure. She said everyone knew what she meant. The judge said that was not an answer. My mother was never formally called, but when the false minutes came up again, she leaned toward my father and hissed something sharp enough that even across the aisle I could see panic move through both of them. By the time the order came down, the result was exactly what the facts required. Confirmed title in my holding company, confirmation of my right to terminate occupancy, immediate injunction on unauthorized use of the brand, referral of the forged document issue for further review if either side wanted to pursue it further. My attorney later told me judges do not enjoy being handed family melodrama wrapped around bad paper. We walked out and my father tried one last time in the corridor. He said I had made my point and asked if I was really going to follow through. I said yes. Chloe stepped in front of me and asked whether ruining the showroom would finally make me feel important. I said no. Being treated like I existed would have been enough. For the next 3 weeks, reality did what drama always hates most. It kept going. Vendors tightened terms. A planned winter collection launch was canceled because they could not assure access to the brand. A local magazine quietly removed Sloan House interiors from a feature on legacy businesses after a polite but devastating legal letter from my attorney. Grant moved out of Chloe's condo. 2 staff members resigned. My mother stopped posting. My father, who had spent years acting like the building was just a backdrop he could command forever, was suddenly supervising bubble wrap and discounted fixtures under emergency timelines. When the deadline came, I did not go to the showroom alone. I went with counsel and a locksmith. The place was not destroyed the way vindictive people destroy homes in movies. It was damaged in a more expensive way. Missing inventory tags, custom drapery rods bent beyond reuse, display lamps without bulbs, scraped marble tables, boxes mislabeled, vendor binders gone. Petty, time-consuming, deliberate. On the central table where Chloe usually filmed her content, there was a white gift box waiting for me. Inside was one of the holiday tags from Christmas. Mine. Blank. No name. No gift. Just the empty tag tucked beneath a note in Chloe's handwriting that said, "Some things never change." I stared at it for a long moment and almost laughed, because even after the hearings and the panic and the collapse, they still needed me to know that in their private mythology, I was the problem. That is the thing about people like that. They can lose everything real and still cling to the fantasy that they were morally taller while falling. The locksmith asked if I wanted the box thrown away. I said no. I slipped the tag into my coat pocket. Some trophies arrive in stranger packaging than others. I sold the building 4 months later to a hospitality group from Atlanta for more than my father had once told people the whole showroom business was worth. I did not keep the Sloan House trademark active for my family. I retired it, licensed a few design archives connected to my grandmother's original work, and let the rest of the myth die with dignity they had never earned. People in Savannah talked, of course. Some said I was ruthless. Some said my father had it coming. Some insisted there had to be more to the story because nobody would really go that far over Christmas gifts. That was always the easiest way for outsiders to misunderstand it. It was never about gifts. It was about hierarchy. It was about being treated as structurally lesser by people whose comfort depended on my willingness to keep funding the lie. It was about being useful enough to exploit and invisible enough to mock. After the showroom closed, my father rented a much smaller space outside the historic district and tried to reopen under a new name. But without the old location, the old credit relationships, or the old image, it never had the same pull. My mother's social circle shrank fast once invitations stopped carrying prestige. Chloe tried to pivot into consulting and lifestyle content, but brand deals dry up when your audience realizes your elegant world was mostly staged on borrowed ground. She and Grant did not get back together. My father sent me 3 letters over the next year. The first said I had destroyed the family. The second said he hoped I was satisfied. The third said he wanted to understand why I had become so cold. I almost answered that one. Not because I owed him anything, because the question was so revealing. He still believed coldness had started with me, not with a father who could watch one daughter sit empty-handed on Christmas morning while everyone else unwrapped proof they mattered. I did not write back. Some questions do not deserve answers, they deserve memory. My extended family mostly sorted themselves into 2 groups. The honest ones admitted they had always suspected my father exaggerated the business story and treated me badly. The others preferred the cleaner fairy tale where I let money poison me. That was fine. People need narratives they can survive themselves inside. I built a new firm the following spring, smaller and sharper, focused on distressed asset transitions and family-held commercial disputes. Turns out there is an entire market for helping people untangle businesses held together by ego and silence. I was very good at it. On the wall of my office, framed in a simple black frame, hangs the blank Christmas gift tag I found in that white box. No name. No inscription. Nothing. Clients sometimes ask what it is. I tell them it is a reminder. Of what? Of the cost of waiting too long for people to acknowledge what they already know they owe you. Do I feel guilty? No. I felt grief. I felt rage. I felt the sour exhaustion that comes when you realize family can know exactly where to wound you, and still act shocked when you finally stop bleeding for them. But guilt. Not once. Because the truth is, I did not destroy my family. I stopped underwriting a performance they were too arrogant to believe could ever end, and every now and then, usually on quiet winter mornings, I think back to Christmas. My father standing there with gifts for everyone except me. My mother saying they only kept me around out of habit. Chloe smiling like cruelty was the same thing as class. Then I think of January 2nd, the package, the panic, the calls I did not answer. The moment the people who had treated me like background noise realized the whole room had been wired through me all along. If I have learned anything, it is this. Blood is not proof of love. Proximity is not proof of respect. And being tolerated is not the same thing as belonging. They spent years trying to convince me I was not on their level. In the end, they were right about one thing only. I was never meant to stay where they put me.